Well, of course, Making a Murderer didn't end the way that we would have liked it to. Maybe it will do in the future, you know, maybe, as I say, if things had been done differently, if Steve and his attorneys hadn't have blinked at that crucial moment when he was arrested. I mean, we hear the guys talking about the fact that, you know, how endangered Steve was at that point, and I suspect that all of his advisors realised how dangerous it was, because they could see straight away the influence that was coming down, that was being sort of passed on down from Peg's office. They could see exactly how Steve was being set up in all of this. But had he had a bit of Ian Botham, what would have happened to Making a Murderer? Well, presumably it would not be called Making a Murderer. It would be called, making a mockery of the legal system or something like that. However, again, I'm not trying to wind up our Australian friends. You're probably wondering how the Test match series finished, with England having drawn the third test. I'll tell you exactly how it finished. They absolutely annihilated Australia in the next two matches and won the series 3-1. Because they were prepared to fight fire with fire. As I say, all down to Ian Botham. This is why he is such a cult hero here in certainly in the UK, and I think in fact throughout the world. People have heard of Sir Ian Botham and his exploits in the 1981 Test series. And as I say, maybe if Steve and his advisors hadn't blinked, as I say, I don't want to sound as if I'm criticising Dean and Jerry and Walt and Steve and Glyn and all these other people, because it must be very difficult for them when they realise what's going on. But how can they criticise the ones above them? You know, you can't. You can only look down the food chain. You can criticise the ones below, but they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. How do we get past this? Well, I think for one thing, we do have to accept that, you know, these people are only human, and they do have frailties, they do have concerns, they do have their own families, their own reputation and everything, you know. So it's only human nature that they're going to look after number one, and unfortunately that meant that Steve was probably facing even worse odds than England on the fourth day of the Headingley Test match, maybe. I'll say it's just a hypothetical question. How should it have ended? And I did actually, Thomas, I'm going to name you again. I did send you that same question. And the one thing that Thomas, you still haven't really answered me is this question, right? You're such a staunch supporter for Brendan, and you realise that, you know, what evil forces, you know, culminated in this coerced confession. Is it not possible that these same forces, in other words, law enforcement in Wisconsin, well, I think we're both agreed, you know, that there are aspects of what goes on in Wisconsin that would not go on in Canada, would not go on in Australia, wouldn't go on in the UK. Is it possible that these same forces were used to convict Steven Avery? I think you're going to plough a bit of a lone furrow if you think that people are going to say, oh Stephen, the evidence all points towards him, because it's a load of planted evidence. No, I think we're going to have to well we're going to have to hope that that yes, Kathleen Zellner can get access to the evidence that she needs to test, and that hopefully then it becomes obvious the planting of the evidence. I concede that, in fact, planting of evidence only proves planting of evidence. You know, we have to go one step further to then prove that Steve was indeed not the person involved in her disappearance. But as I say, we have to look up, we have to realise, as I say, that all of these people that were there to support Steve, they're only human. They have their own limitations. They have, you know, things that they're prepared to do, things that they're not prepared to do. You know, it was Jerry or Dean that said, you know, does any sane lawyer like the idea of going to Manitowoc or you know, Calumet, but, you know, in front of the Manitowoc jury and tell them that their coppers are bent? You know, imagine trying to tell everybody that, you know, the people above me, they're also bent, and you know, we need to take them down. It possibly isn't going to work like that. As I say, if Steve had have pursued the civil suit, I think that's what would have been interesting. I think that's where, just as England won the series, I think Steve could have prevailed, and I think the corruption in Wisconsin could in fact have been exposed. As it is, all we have at the moment is making a murderer that touches on that corruption, and we just have to hope. Well, certainly, the vast majority of us, you know, millions throughout the world, not just in America, hope that finally, you know, we do get to the stage where people are being held accountable. As somebody pointed out, Pagel is now facing the the judge of all judges, shall we say, and hopefully the great architect is taking a very dim view of her. And as people have also pointed out, hopefully emails, etc., correspondence of hers will finally surface, come to light, and we'll find out exactly what was going on. So as I say, sorry about doing a two-part, and well, as I say once again, I'll catch you again. Bye for now.